Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, as amended on March 28, 2025, this meeting will be conducted in person and as a courtesy via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation is being provided, the meeting hearing will not be suspended or terminated if there are tech problems unless required by law. Viewers can visit the local scene.media/Duxbury, formerly pac-tv, to watch a video replay of this meeting on Duxbury YouTube. Good evening. Well, we are getting down to it as far as having all of our departments and all of our information presented. And tonight we're going to welcome Jeannie Horn from our HR director for the discussion on employee benefits, life insurance, and Medicare. Jeannie? I'm Mary. Please do. Sorry.
We are going to do some teamwork.
Yes.
All right.
I'm going to share my screen. Bear with me.
Minutes first, or you're gonna win the
Pardon me?
minutes first?
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
They're on the agenda, that's all.
Yep. The minutes that we've got?
Yes, we have two sets.
Yep.
The first is November 2nd. And
20.
we're November 20th. I just saw the two and that was zero. On the just a question for Mary, I think, under the sewer department, there was a statement made that I didn't understand what it meant, but just a little clarification. Under the paragraph concerning PFAS, it says the state has a zero funding mechanism, which can cover a portion of the PFAS project. Is that what we wanted to say?
Yes. So the state has a program called SRF, the State Revolving Fund. And if a community qualifies for it, then they do offer zero interest loans.
Oh,
And one of the things that Sheila had mentioned during that meeting was that last year, the town applied for that program. It's called submitting an application onto the intended use plan, the IUP, and the town of Duxbury was denied. And we for that round of funding. And the funding that was available went to other communities. So we will apply again. And we will keep trying and in the hopes that we become eligible for zero interest loan funding.
We were denied because we weren't, our readings were not significant enough to qualify us.
Just a typo down under the historical commission. The first sentence, Mr. McKinnon spoke to that man who was requesting the same amount again. In INF, it should be in FY27, it's just misspelling. And on the final paragraph, just before the vote to adjourn, it says, second sentence, the moderator appoints members, should be moderator. Appoints, just says the moderate appoints. Should say the moderator. That's it. On the minutes of the 20th, I therefore move the minutes of the 20th as amended.
Second. Okay. Any further discussion? Al, we'll start with you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
Right now,
Betsy, aye?
Kathleen, I.
Okay, great.
that is
So 600.
6-0.
Yep.
And then we also have the minutes of the 25th, which was the school committee meeting. And there were 9 of us present on the in the first paragraph. The issue about whether or not there was notification of our meeting, our scheduled meeting with the school committee. It says she thought this meeting would be posted with the school committee so they could answer questions from the school committee. The school committee was not formally invited to this meeting. We'll put at the beginning of that sentence, it was stated that the school committee was not formally invited to this meeting. You go down to 2 paragraphs later that starts, there were discussion and thoughts on what could be accomplished, blah, blah, blah. At the end of that, I would like to add, Ashley Mahar pointed out that this meeting was noted on page 7 of the school's budget timeline. After that, I have no other additions or deletions.
Less said, the better.
Move to approve meeting minutes.
Move to approve the minutes of the November 25th as amended.
Second.
All those in favor? Al,
Aye.
Chuck, I.
JRI.
Brenda, aye.
Betsy, I,
Kathleen, I.
600.
6-0. All right, that's the minutes. Thank you.
Oh, thank you,
Thank
Frank.
you.
Appreciate that. All right. Back to the good stuff here. The, Jeannie and Mary, take it away.
Slide deck here. I did email this out a little while ago, maybe an hour and a half ago. If you can't see the screen, you should have a copy of this in your email. And I also posted it to the finance committee page of the town's website, if anyone's looking for it. Okay. All right, so we have 3 remaining budgets that have not yet been presented to this committee, and this should round out the full complement of the FY27 budget. So tonight we're going to talk about the last 3 remaining pieces of fixed costs. And so on this chart here, I've listed out what the town of Duxbury customarily calls their shared costs. And these are items that are born in the town's budget, but apply to all departments within the FY27 budget. These fixed costs typically account for anywhere from 18 to 20% of the town's overall budget, so they are fairly significant. We did cover the items that are not highlighted, and tonight we're going to cover the first 3 items which are highlighted. And that includes Medicare, life insurance, and health insurance. The amounts that are presented here for the FY27 budget request are the amounts that we will be discussing this evening. I do want to point out that whenever I put together a chart, I always try to put together a year-over-year comparison to see how much in a group or a line item has increased or decreased year over year, as well as the percentage increase. You'll note that I have 2 sets of comparisons listed here. The first one is the empirical year-over-year change as we walk through fiscal years. But below it, I have a second set of comparisons. And the reason for that is, if you look at the FY26 budget on row 945 unemployment, when we had the FY26 budget and we had the reductions in force, one of the things that the town had to do was set aside funding in order to be prepared for any unemployment claims that may arise due to those reductions in force. So we worked with the school department and the town manager early on in the process to identify those positions and the potential cost of unemployment claims.
$500,000, right?
And it was $550,000. So a couple of things. Not all of those reductions in force resulted in unemployment claims. There were some folks who actually chose to retire. And there were other folks who found other positions. And so our exposure for unemployment claims has turned out to be less than what was anticipated, but we did need to set aside that funding. So when you look at historically our budget and you look at year over year impacts of our fixed costs, that year FY26 has this anomaly, if you will. So if I back that anomaly out of the year over year comparison, you can see at the bottom that our fixed costs are growing at a rate of, 6%, 7% annually. And these fixed costs include some things that are beyond our control. For example, retirement. So with respect to Plymouth County retirement, we receive an assessment every year from Plymouth County of the amount that we are obligated to contribute for our pension liability. So there are some of these line items where we do have some influence, and there are other line items where we do not have influence. So we're going to talk about the first 3 listed here. So the first one is Medicare. Medicare is part of our federal tax withholding, and the employee pays 1.45% of Medicare eligible wages. They pay a 1.45% withholding. The town is required to match that at 1.45%. This applies to all eligible wages that we pay out across all departments to all employees. And when I say eligible, there are some caveats to that. So we offer some pre-tax benefits, and those amounts of pre-tax benefits are withheld first from gross wages before the Medicare calculation. So it's not necessarily looking at our total salaries budget for the entire organization and multiplying it by 1.45, because we do know that there will be some reductions. Then we also, when we put this budget together, we try not to over budget in Medicare, because invariably in an organization the size of this, we are going to have vacancies that happen throughout the year, or we're going to have attrition where we may see some folks at a higher rate of pay leave and are replaced with folks at a lower rate of pay. We can't always predict all of those circumstances. So what we do is we try to budget Medicare fairly conservatively. And what we have seen for the last couple of years is at the end of the year, when I come before you guys and ask you to support end of year transfers, we have traditionally had end of year transfers to backfill the Medicare line, so that we're not over budgeting and leaving idle capacity available. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
If we do over budget it, that does roll into free cash, yes?
It does, it certainly
It's not
does.
earmarked, okay.
You're absolutely right. But as you've seen over the last couple of years, our budgets are really tight. So we want to make sure that we're trying to budget conservatively and be able to use capacity to provide the services that the community expects us to provide. So what I am projecting is an 8% increase in Medicare for FY 27. And that's an 8% increase over FY 26. We are in the process of collective bargaining, so we know that there's going to be some impacts. And so in the years where we have collective bargaining agreements that are facing us, we need to make sure that we budget a little bit more for Medicare. So the FY 27 budget has $876,586 allocated to Medicare. Are there any questions on that?
Does that include the restoration of RIFs, or is this tied to A or B?
So this is tied to A, and it's a fair question. I can't predict what's going to be supported, so I am again being conservative. With respect to Medicare, we've had the opportunity for the last several years to be able to backfill this at the end of the year. So I'm not proposing a 5B modification. The number of positions I think we will be able to absorb. And if you go back to my earlier conversation about that unemployment, there will be some surplus left in that unemployment line that we will be able to utilize to backfill.
And so do you have an idea of what that unemployment, how it's tracking, what we're spending from that?
I do not have that information with me this evening.
No, but how long will it go? How long is that employment?
36 weeks.
Is it 36? Okay, so we should have that if it started July 1st. So we should have a good idea by the time we get to town meeting. Okay.
The next one is life insurance. Life insurance, the FY 27 request is $13,260. It is a very modest increase over the previous year, FY 26. When this, but I will call your attention to something. So if you look at the rows 25, 26, and 27, the FY 25 budget, what ended up happening in FY 25 is that there were additional folks who did enroll in this program, and we did need to do an end of year transfer to true up that line item. So we saw a little uptick in this, the enrollment of this benefit program. But when we put the 26 budget together, you can see that the 26 budget is less than our 25 actuals. We may or may not have an end of year issue with that, depending on what the uptake in life insurance benefits will be for FY 26. But when the 26 budget was put together, we of course did not know the 25 actuals, so it's a timing issue. Now that we know the 25 actuals, we're using that to look at what we should budget for FY 27. So this is a slight increase over 25 and 26. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so we're gonna move on to health insurance. And I know that this group has sat through us talking about health insurance on many, many occasions. So I'm gonna try to do a broad brushstroke and go through some information. And Jeannie, feel free to jump in whenever you want. What I'm showing here is the town of Duxbury's rate sheet for FY 26, which illustrates all of the different health insurance plans that we offer. We offer a suite of Blue Cross Blue Shield products, an HMO called Network Blue, and then Blue Care Elect, which is the PPO. And these are the rates that are in effect for FY 26. And below that, there are Medicare and Medic supplements that are available for our retired employees. With respect to health insurance enrollment, these are a couple of charts that illustrate for you the number of folks that we do have enrolled in these programs. There is about 500 active employees and about 500 retired employees who are taking advantage of these benefits. On the left-hand side, you'll see the enrollment statistics for our PPO plan, and on the right is the enrollment statistics for our HMO
So
plan.
active employees.
This one is, let me just look at the numbers. Yes, this looks like active employees. Yes.
It's active employees and early retirees who are not eligible for, not yet eligible for Medicare.
Medicare.
Yep.
So before they were 65.
And this is town and school retirees. So the previous slide, you're absolutely right, Kathleen, was active, as Jeannie elaborated on. And then this is our retirees and the plans. You can see the majority of folks are in the MedX2 plan. We have a limited number of folks in the Medicare Blue Freedom Rx plan.
Did we just start did we just start the Med Advantage program?
We did. Prior to that, we had a managed blue for seniors, which was more of an HMO format. So the MedX2 plan is a Medicare supplemental plan, and the Medicare Blue PPO is a Medicare Advantage plan. We've never had a Medicare Advantage plan before, so no one was ever enrolled in the prior plan. So we were able to phase that one out very easily, and we introduced.
Looks like it's getting some traction.
It is getting some traction, and it was nice this year, especially because there were some significant primary care changes in our area as relates to serving the needs of our Medicare eligible employees. So it gave people a lot more freedom to choose the plan that suits their needs best. It's an tough choice.
Thank you.
So we talk a lot about the fact that the town of Duxbury is self-insured. There's approximately, I think the last time I looked, there was about 40 communities. Don't quote me on that. I can look it up, but there were several dozen communities across the Commonwealth who are self-insured, but the majority of communities are not. They are either in a joint purchasing arrangement or in a premium-based plan. But we are self-insured, and we talk about this a lot. One of the biggest benefits for us being self-insured is that on the whole, it is less expensive for us to provide these products by being self-insured instead of being on a premium-based plan. It provides us the ability to make plan design changes so we can react to things that we see with respect to our claims. We've done a number of things like introducing prescription benefit programs or health and wellness programs in order to try to keep people healthy and to manage our claim costs. So we have complete autonomy over that. It also provides us, based on those two things, to be able to provide robust benefits to our employees, which is important. And we are evaluated on a smaller risk pool. So when we talk about our risk pool, we're talking about town of Duxbury employees as opposed to us being commingled with other communities that may have less healthy risk pools and therefore may incur higher costs. So there are certainly some positive reasons to be self-insured, but there are also some risks. that are associated with it. The town bears more risk with respect to our claims because we do pay for our claims out of pocket when those claims increase, and you're going to see that shortly. There is a direct impact. It is much more labor intensive to administer a self-insured program than it is to administer the other types of programs. And we spend a lot of time doing this, not only with town employees, but also with our insurance committee, who meets on a regular basis to evaluate our performance and to talk about those plan design changes and make positive impacts. And it's also less predictable. So when you're in a group purchasing arrangement or you're in a premium-based plan, your costs are much more predictable. When we are bearing the risk of covering medical claims, there can be some pretty significant volatility year over year. And I don't know if you guys have remembered back. So during the COVID eras, the COVID era, if you will, there were a lot of folks who were not going to the doctor. They were not. Exactly. They were not having their elective procedures. There was a real downturn in the utilization of healthcare. And now we've started to see that turn around and there is a much stronger uptick. So you risk that volatility.
So Mary, I'm speaking from the healthcare chair.
Mhm.
I'm assuming that because we are self-insured, we have a stop loss,
Me too.
right, policy that goes concurrent with the, to help us manage the risks and so on associated with the self-insured policy. But the overall, other than maybe some infrequent blips where we have a less than healthy pool, it seems to have worked in our benefit, to our benefit, to continue in this self-insured mode.
We evaluate it every year.
Well, I know
Yeah.
that Betsy, you're on the committee.
Yeah, and this year in particular, we worked with our consultant cooking company to deliver the town of Duxbury's fiscal year 26 health insurance outlook.
That would be the link right there.
Yes. So, we kicked the tires on that question.
This is a very good report. If you have any questions about it, go into this report. It's pretty comprehensive.
Right, and what it did was it confirmed that remaining self-insured in our current model is what is working best for the town of Duxbury right now. We compared what Duxbury's doing to the Joint Insurance Commission, which had a particularly troubling year recently, and the Mayflower Municipal Health Group. And, you know, given our claims experience and the participation of and the engagement of our employee population and our ability to introduce cost avoidance measures, we're in the best possible position.
One of the things that always will strike me through the years is that we're very nimble. And we have the ability, if there is a way to reduce costs through programs or incentives to our population, we can implement them in a timely fashion. We don't have to wait till 6 towns get together and decide what they're going to do. We get somebody and they give us a presentation, we hear from various people and we can make a decision. And it's really helped tremendously on keeping drug costs especially, you know, at least, I won't say under control, but what we're doing as well as anybody could under the
And
circumstances.
you have a deeper relationship with the health insurance provider as well. They're much more in tune to the needs of specifically to this town.
Right,
They show up, they're great.
Yep.
yeah.
And when we walk through the halls of the MMA annual meeting, at this past January when I attended MMA, as I was walking down the aisle, I heard my name being called out. It was our rep from Blue Cross Blue Shield, Jen.
Yeah.
So we developed a very close relationship.
Yeah.
And they have so much information to share for us as far as
Keeping
you know,
healthy.
keeping an eye on it, what's coming, legislation that might be passing. I think this is really one of the shining stars of what we do.
It is.
This health insurance and being self-insured.
Duxbury is held up statewide as a model of how to run a self-insured entity. The level of collaboration and commitment that Duxbury has is unparalleled. It's not really seen anywhere else in the state. So we should be very proud of that because it's been fostered over the last 20 years, and it's one of the most
It is
important
20
things
years now,
that,
isn't it?
yeah, that we provide to our employees.
And it's considered a platinum brand.
It is, yes.
Last couple of specific questions. We're, for the health insurance, we're 25.75, employees 25 in the town.
For active employees, friend, and for retirees, we're 50-50.
Oh, okay, interesting. I didn't realize the distinction.
And that's
That
considered
perhaps
the
decides
ideal.
why those premiums are higher, because they're paying 50% of the cost. Just writing this down. The percentage increase for the employees last year was roughly
9%.
part
9%
9%.
for the employees.
Yep,
It was higher for the retirees.
Higher for the retirees, okay.
But it's a higher percentage of a smaller number.
What was our basic experience for 20? You mentioned one of the downsizes.
I'm gonna go through that and
Okay,
I'll show.
was that the reason for the bump in premiums, or was it more industry wide?
Yes and yes.
All right, next slide.
Okay, great. All right, so for our discussion tonight, the town appropriation that has been included in the 5A budget is $9,324,868. It's a 7% increase that equates to an increase of $610,000. And you can see this chart over here illustrating the town's appropriation or contribution to the trust fund to cover our costs. You can see that in FY24, there was a reduction, and right here, $421,000. At that time, the town took a look at the trust fund balance and took a look at what was happening in the market and reduced the appropriation for health insurance in that given year. But what we have seen is that there has been an impact in doing that. So what we need to do is make sure that we always have a consistent appropriation that is going to continue to make sure that our trust fund has a healthy balance and is able to withstand that volatility that we were just talking about a minute ago. And you'll see it in a further slide. So
Is A and B the same?
correct.
Yeah.
So with respect to claims, and friend, I think this is what you were asking, if it's not, let me know. But this is just one component of the overall trust fund activity, but it is the largest component, which is the medical claims that we are responsible for covering. And you can see that there is a high degree of volatility associated with those claims. And you'll see that there was a pretty significant uptick in 2025. So we went from 10.6 million to 13.6 million in claims for claims and administrative fees. There's a couple of things that run through this particular line item. But we have to watch that volatility pretty closely in order to make sure we're managing the trust fund responsibly.
Do we expect that to level off, Mary?
Not yet, until we sort of talk about a couple of more plan design changes. But so when Hill came out in March and did their presentation and provided that report that we were looking at, they explained, and it's documented in the report, the causes of what's happening with medical insurance. So we know that the unit cost, just the cost of care from providers, is going up at a pretty steady pace, right? So we all see it when we go to the doctor and see those bills and the cost of those tests are growing. But there's also a very significant impact with respect to prescriptions and the GLP-1 drugs. And we saw an impact with respect to that in our medical claims, and the prices of those drugs are very, very expensive. So as a result, when we see an uptick in these claims, we need to make sure that we're having an uptick in our appropriation in order to help offset the impacts. And so the next step is for, what we've been working on. I shouldn't even say the next step, what the insurance committee has been working on for quite some time now, is to manage those medical claims and try to make plan design changes to bring that $13 million down to the best of our ability. Now, we don't have any influence over the cost that providers are charging for those services and those tests, but what we can try to do is make sure that we're providing all tools to keep our employees healthy, and not have to go to the doctor and incur these charges.
I know from a Blue Cross Blue Shield perspective, the GLP-1 drugs have been restricted to very specific conditions, and it's mostly around cardiac
Or diabetes.
or diabetes.
And we're going to, Blue Cross Blue Shield is making some changes with respect to how much they will cover for those drugs on a go forward basis. And we will be evaluating whether we offer some sort of plan design change to address that. Or folks will have, those drugs won't necessarily be covered if they're not for the eligible purposes. So these are the types of things that the insurance committee reviews and responds to.
So you just mentioned that, are you just using Blue Cross as a reference point? Or you don't actually put your prescriptions through Blue Cross, correct?
We do.
You do? Okay, so.
But they bill us and we pay them if
So
we're
but
self-funded.
When we have the same, would they, the employees have the same deductibles that other people would have for, in the different classes of drugs?
So our plan design mirrors the most popular group insurance commission plan. So our copays and deductibles reflect what the most popular state plan
Okay,
reflects. But we, as a self-insured entity, do have more autonomy in terms of what our formulary drugs are.
Mhm.
So they're recommended across Blue Shield, and then we can make changes as we need to within those formulary recommendations.
one other question. Now, we talked to, a friend asked you about the 75-25 split. Is that part of the contracts?
So
Is that negotiated in the
the
contracts?
75-25 split and the 50-50 split is determined by town meeting. So those are the most ideal splits
Mhm.
that are recommended. And any plan design changes, we would need to implement through Mass General Law, Chapter 32B, Sections 18 through 23, which we've done twice already. So we enter into a memorandum of agreement with the unions. We have separate non-union meetings about those too.
So is that up for negotiations this year?
So those are handled separate from negotiations. We can do that anytime.
Right.
We did have language in the contracts
Mhm.
that specifically referenced Blue Cross Blue Shield and certain plan names, and we've negotiated those out.
All right, so with
But
respect,
I think also in the trust fund, I do want to insert here that there are guidelines as to how much based on what our obligations we perceive them to be, that the trust fund is a healthy amount. And we have always maintained and exceeded that healthy amount so that we would not get caught short as far as some, unknown incident or circumstance that would cause us to not have appropriated the correct amount over the course of the year. I'm sorry, Mary, that was probably where you were
I
headed.
think Al has a question.
Who has a question? Oh, Al, okay, yep.
Yeah, let me just can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, first of all, that's an excellent presentation. But a couple of concerns about a self-insured policy. I'm a firm believer that Duxbury has done an outstanding job through Jeannie and Mary and administering and with the insurance committee on this. But what concerns me is that in any self-insured plan, there's a volatility that can occur unexpectedly with situations which are unpredictable, where there's catastrophic illnesses of various kinds. So the point I'm trying to get at here is, as we go forward, and I really like the report, I like what I'm hearing, etc. But are we also standing back to take another look, sort of what I would call a secondary look at volatility and the impact going forward, so that we can reevaluate from time to time whether or not self-insurance continues to be the best way for us?
So, and Jerry, you
There was
can, I'm saying,
some-
we meet every 6 weeks.
Every month.
Every month, there's mostly, some months, you know. if
We're not meeting
nothing's
in
going on,
December.
Not meeting in December. Our meeting was supposed to be
Christmas
Christmas Eve, and we said no.
Yeah, we saw that movie.
No, saw that movie. But what you're asking us to evaluate, we do on a monthly basis. We
Okay.
have every month, whether we're over or under on all the different plans. Quarterly, we have a more substantial meeting where we see what we've done for the quarter and where we're headed to for the year. And as far as being on top of those numbers, I have to say, I can't imagine that anybody would be doing a more thorough job on that.
Yes, and to your point, it's almost like we're partially self-insured because we do have stop loss insurance that
Yeah,
kicks in
right.
when claims reach $125,000. And we get a monthly aggregated report, the HR department does, on our high claimants. And that monthly aggregated report includes individuals who are 50% of the way to that stop loss limit, and people who have met it and exceeded it. So that is one of the tools in the toolbox that we use to understand what our risks are. Of course, there isn't much we can do about that, but we just have an awareness of it. But what an interesting fact in the fiscal year health insurance outlook that was prepared for us by with our health insurance consultant is that the volatility is actually outside of the self-insured health insurance environment. The Group Insurance Commission, which is the largest in the state, in fiscal year 26, they had average rate increases that ranged from 10% to 17%. And Maya, which is the next largest group insurer, had even greater average increases. Their average increases were 10 to 20%. So that's a huge swing. The regional purchasers had 8 to 30%, and the direct carriers had 9 to 30%. Our average percentage increase on our active plan was 9%. So,
Well, I'm glad I asked the question. The reason I'm glad I asked the question is that, Jeannie, you're bringing out this information, and I think this kind of information is important to be reported in our proceedings on this meeting, because it basically shows that we're monitoring the risk. And my question was really based about risk. You know, what are the limits of the risk? And what you've done is to provide information that assures me confidently that that's being looked at frequently. It's being looked at with respect to all the claims, and we're getting really good value from all that work. So thanks very much for answering the question.
thanks for asking.
We keep on going. Okay, so this slide illustrates for you our trust fund balance. So when we talk about paying our medical claims, we paid those claims out of the withholdings that we received from employees, plus the town's contribution, plus a few other sources of revenue that make up our ability to cover those medical claims through a level monthly deposit to Blue Cross Blue Shield. When we have periods where there's some volatility and we have high claims, what ends up happening is we end up leaning on the trust fund as a reserve to cover those excesses. And you can see that in 2017 and 2018, the town had to lean on their trust fund pretty heavily to cover those excesses. And if I flip back to the previous slide, which is our paid claims, you will see that that correlates to that uptick in medical claims in the 2016-2017 time period. So we saw an uptick in those medical claims. The withholdings were not fully covering the cost of those claims, and therefore the town had to rely on the use of the trust fund reserves to cover that volatility. If you look at 2025, we're seeing the same thing happen, not to the same degree for sure, but we are seeing that we had to rely on our trust fund reserves with that 1 year of high claims that we just saw on the previous slide. So in order to address that, that's why we're looking at a 7% increase in the town's appropriation in order to manage that volatility. This slide here.
Wait, before you go on, how is that trust invested?
So that the trust of this, a significant portion of that trust fund is invested with Rockland Trust
Mhm.
as part of our trust fund portfolio.
Okay.
And then a smaller portion is invested just like our general fund proceeds so that we have liquidity in order to pay our bills.
And who, or the insurance group oversee that? The
No.
insurance committee?
No, managing our funds?
No, not manage it, but I mean, review it,
Oh, to review the,
the trust.
Investment.
yes, yeah.
So it's, it's the insurance committee that does that.
The commit, well, the treasurer, if I understand your question correctly.
Let's know who's looking at these trust funds.
Okay, so the responsibility for managing our funds is our town treasurer. They are the custodian of all funds.
Okay.
So our treasurer is the one who is responsible for making sure that all deposits get in timely, and that we are managing liquidity as well as trying to maximize the return on the non-liquid or the portion of the trust fund that we don't necessarily need to utilize right now.
Right.
And therefore it's being invested in a longer term strategy with Rockland Trust.
Thank you.
The issue, like 20 years ago, the 20 plus years ago, the treasurer would manage them.
Mhm.
And that did not prove to be a successful strategy. So we went on the hunt to find somebody. I think you were involved in this too. At that point,
It was after my time.
was it after that we were trying to find somebody that was specializing in municipal investments, and it's a pretty slim pickings. And we're lucky that Rockland Trust does have a group that focuses on the particular needs and restrictions legally that we had to stay within for both this fund and all of our other trust funds. But that periodically they will put it out to bid and invite other investment managers to take a look and give us a proposal on how they would do it.
So this slide here responds to one of Friend's earlier questions about rate increases. So this is the historical trend of what we have had for rate increases for our employees. And this is something that we look at with the insurance committee as well. And one of the things that we talked about at length, either earlier this year or the latter part of last year, was there were a couple of years where there were 0% increases trying to mitigate the impacts on employees. However, we've come to consensus that indicates that that's not necessarily always a great decision. That there should be, because what ends up happening is when costs of health insurance then escalate too quickly, we then need to implement a much larger increase for the employee, and that can have some negative consequences for employees. So if we are better able to moderate those increases year over year and have the ability to continue to maintain a trust fund balance, that makes much more sense. Not only from managing this program, but also the impact on the employee. So
The income from the trust fund stays in trust fund?
it does.
Thank you.
And then for additional information, I've included a couple of links. So the report, the current rate sheet that we saw in the first slide is linked here, as well as the town's list of health insurance resources, all of the programs, descriptions, enrollment forms, everything. If anyone is really interested in taking a deep dive, you can use this link here in the middle. And then at the top, this is a report that was prepared by the Mass Municipal Association with respect to the ever increasing, oh, is this link working? There we go. It doesn't automatically share. Let me flip over so you can see. So in September of this year, the MMA released a report in their their monthly publication called the Beacon, talking about what's happening with healthcare. And I think it's, sort of, we're familiar with the issues with respect to escalating costs and these designer drugs that people are taking advantage of, that with the costs increasing. And so this is not a problem that just the town of Duxbury is facing. This is a national problem, if you will, across the country, where folks are balancing the high cost of providing healthcare and trying to keep it as affordable as possible. So please feel free to take a look at that link and read that report from MMA. So with that being said, I will turn it over to you guys to see if you have any questions.
I think it's a very thorough presentation.
Yeah.
Hard to
That's good.
find a lot wrong or questions left unanswered. Let's leave it that way. Getting back to the total, I think we talked about this right there in bold print on the side. These fixed costs represent close to 20% of our annual operating budget. And we have so little we can do about it. That it's important to recognize that that's such a big chunk of every year's increase.
Yeah, 20%. Yeah, and it goes up either, you know,
Exactly.
yeah.
That's the key to remember.
I'm good. Thank you. And I think on your other fixed costs, we've covered these in previous meetings.
You did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
That completes all of the departments within our base budget.
Right. Okay. So back to tonight's agenda. Is everybody's happy with the shared costs? We're all good. Al, you good?
Yep.
Yeah, he's, I think he's good.
The debt service.
Debt service.
Budget.
Great. One of the things that I had, and asked Mary, and she was kind enough to supply as far as the debt service goes, is, not a deep dive, but a look at potential impact that some of the requests that we have, specifically the feasibility study for, either a debt exclusion or some type of borrowing to carry that. And honestly, if we do we do a feasibility study, it pretty much means that we're headed down the road to building a new school. And I prevail upon Mary to just take a look at what that looks like. I think one of the things that we heard last year when we were discussing the override is some dissatisfaction with the community on understanding the impact of the debt exclusions and when they come on, because you'll vote for it and it might be 2 to 3 years before you see the result of that vote hitting your tax bill. And I heard that, and I didn't disagree with it. People want a little more detail because they're not drawn to it. They don't do this every day the way we do. So they vote for a new truck or a new building or whatever, and the actual implication of what that is going to cost them, along with an override, I think is important detail for people to have. We haven't got a recommendation from fiscal advisory yet on the request for that feasibility study and how they think that should be handled. I'm hopeful that they're meeting next week.
The school building committee?
School
Or-
building
or-
committee or fiscal advisory.
Oh,
looking
fiscal
at their
advisory, I'm sorry.
request.
What day is, today is Tuesday?
Who knows what day it is? I don't know.
They do have a meeting tomorrow. Tomorrow's Wednesday, so they meet, this week they meet on Wednesday
Uh-huh.
and next week they meet on Tuesday.
And they'll be discussing it, I'm sure.
Yes, so the school department has already gone before fiscal advisory to present all of their capital requests, and the feasibility study was discussed, and I think that was perhaps 2 weeks ago
Mhm.
out of fiscal advisory meeting. But my understanding is that they will be having, additional conversations. So fiscal advisory, much like you guys, meets with all of the departments in order to gather all of the information. And then they will go through a review and recommendation process at the end where they will prioritize and determine what their recommendations are with respect to capital. So school did present it, but the fiscal advisory has not made a definitive recommendation yet.
Okay, and I just
Make
think,
sure-
yeah,
I'm sorry,
go ahead.
just to get back to that debt exclusion, to make sure I understand it. If we use the debt exclusion, that money, the 1,000,003 or whatever the number is, that money can be rolled into the ultimate financing for the school if we go forward with the school.
Mhm.
So if we put it to a debt exclusion, you don't amortize it, you leave it in an interest-only note, if you will, until the new school comes on and then gets rolled into that. So you really never start to amortize that debt. It just sits there interest-only until the conclusion of the
Yes.
building, and then it gets rolled into the debt for the long-term note.
Yes, but that makes a big assumption that that there will be a construction project at the end of it,
And
right?
if
So,
there is none, then you have to amortize.
You do,
and the key to that is with respect to a feasibility study, the maximum length of time that you can borrow for a feasibility study is 5 years.
I would think no longer than that. I mean, well, that makes sense.
And so what happens is so in this particular case, we're talking about a feasibility study with an MSBA reimbursement component. So we won't know what the final cost is, right? So right now, the estimate is 1.75 million for the feasibility study. There is some available funding to offset that and bring that down to about 1.45 million. But then the MSBA will also reimburse the town for eligible costs. And they will reimburse up to, I believe it was 38.37%. But not every item in that feasibility study is eligible. So the reimbursement on the remaining 1.45 would likely be less than the 38%. The issue is that if we borrow for the feasibility study, we can borrow for 5 years. Yes, you are absolutely right. It would be a short-term temporary borrowing. So we would incur the cost of paying interest. But then if, let's say, it takes 2 years to complete the feasibility study, so now we're starting year 3 of the borrowing, a couple of things happen. Number one, in year 3 of a temporary borrowing, you have a principal pay down. So we will start to incur costs related to principal. And if the construction project does not move forward, then you still have to pay that feasibility study back within 5 years. And so for the first 2 years, if we've made interest-only payments, then what that means is in years 3, 4, and 5, we have to pay back the full cost of it. Instead of 1/5 of the cost annually, we would have to pay 1/3, a much larger number, over a 3-year period.
And there's no reimbursement.
And there would be no reimbursement. Well, no, let's qualify that. The feasibility study is still subject to reimbursement, but I'm sorry, I'm getting an error message on my computer. So we would still have to wait until we understood what the final costs were before we did the permanent financing of that. But then, the decision needs to be made on whether the town wishes to move forward with a construction project or not. So, and I,
6 million a year.
Right, and I think that the conversation, I mean, based on what we went through last time, the conversation will not just be on what the feasibility study is, but somebody will ask, well, if we build a school, what's it gonna
Right,
cost
well,
us?
that's obviously
And,
what
you
does
know,
that do to our excluded, except
part of the conversation.
right, part of the excluded debt,
excluded debt?
and, so everything that I asked Mary to do is subject to what we decide to do, so it was really ridiculous that I asked her, but yet I did. And she was.
There you go.
There you go, and she was, because I know someone is going to ask, and it was, I mean, I wasn't the only one to hear those questions last
Well, was
year.
there anything else within the B budget that would trigger any kind of debt either way? I don't think so. Most of it was operating, wasn't it?
Not, so there's not anything in the B budget that would trigger debt. However, there's a couple of things that I would like, I'll.
In capital, perhaps.
Correct. So there are some items in capital that will trigger debt. And that, yep, exactly, $1 million fire engine. But there's also things in our capital program in the coming years on the short-term radar. So not necessarily FY 27, but FY 28 or 29 that are fairly significant. The one that comes to mind is the capping of the McNeil landfill. So we are currently in design and engineering on, and Sheila had touched upon it when she was here. So we've allocated ARPA funding to do the design and engineering for the cap at the McNeil landfill. And the estimates that she's receiving at this time for the cost of construction are approximately $7 million. So the ability to fund a $7 million borrowing within the levy is remote. And so that would more than likely end up being an exclusion question as well.
So what does that do against our guideline, our overall guideline?
So I'm gonna show you something and this is hypothetical. And I want to qualify this as Betsy and I were having a conversation. She asked me to put together some sort of an analysis that tests of the financial policy for exempt debt with hypothetical projections. So I want to be clear on that because I don't want anybody to be wedded to any numbers that I'm going to show you that they are not real. They are let me show you and I'll explain it a little bit more. So let me share my screen.
I guess my point in making Mary do this and asking she was kind enough to do it is that none of the actions that we take can be in isolation. And I think that we need to do a better job of that. And one of the things that when Katie was showing us the new DPW building, what was the number for, was it 72,000 a year for maintenance upkeep?
75, I think so.
Yeah, and we have not been as attentive to those numbers to support the buildings that this town has been gracious enough to give us. And
That's why we have a deferred maintenance issue.
right, which is why we have a deferred maintenance thing. So debt is no different. So when we talk about any of these proposals and ask for money, we need to factor in, well, what is it gonna cost? And which is what led us down this hole.
So if you can, let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Can you guys see that at all?
Yes.
Okay, so the policy that's in the financial guidelines says that the town should endeavor to carry no more than 12% of the levy in exempt debt. And the policy actually further states that if the town exceeds 10%, then they should develop some sort of strategy to bring that back down. So 12% is sort of the upper framework. So what I did is I went back and I took a look at and tested this policy over a period of years dating back to 2003. And in this column here, oops, I was trying to maybe just highlight this in a color so you can see it. In this column here, I'm testing whether we're within the policy or we're not. And so for several years, the town did manage to stay within that policy. And this is the percentage of the levy with respect to exempt debt. But when you come, and this should come as no surprise, when you come down to 2014, this town is now out of compliance with that policy. And the reason is in 2014, that is when the town incurred the debt for the middle high school complex. And so that was a pretty sizable debt exclusion in order to construct that campus. And for several years, given the volume of that excluded debt, for several years, you were out of compliance with the policy framework as we started to amortize and pay down that debt.
I do want to interject, this was not a surprise. We knew this going into it back then and the conversations were had, whether they resonated or not, but we realized that there would be a number of years where we exceeded the 12% by 1%, and in the case of the first year, you know,
But
yeah, 2.73. So, but it then was going to write within that period of time.
Mhm. So as we had, and remember that the middle school complex, when that borrowing was done, there was also some other debt rolled into it as well with the police station
Yeah.
and the crematory. So we have a number of pieces of exempt debt that are in our debt model. And those are maturing, but we know that the middle high school complex is maturing, scheduled to mature in 2038. And that's when that will roll off. And that's an annual payment of, by the time we finish, will be just under $4 million. So we'll see a big portion of exempt debt roll off the tax rolls once that matures. So so what I've done here, again, based on a conversation that Betsy wanted to see a projection. If I look at our debt portfolio on what we have today, exempt debt only, and I add in the two projects that we're talking about, number one is the McNeil dump, and the other, and I want to be clear, this is a fictitious number. And I will tell you why I chose this number. If we were to assume that the town did support moving forward with the construction of the school, the break or the point where the policy breaks is if the cost of that project exceeds $63 million. So right now we have the capacity to stay within the policy, but when we start to look at bringing on additional debt exclusions, if we were to bring on the McNeil dump at $7 million, and again, I plugged this in or programmed this in for 2030 with the assumption that we still have some design, engineering, permitting, and other work to happen before we start to have to incur that debt. And this assumes the full cost of the debt in these earlier years. That's not typical. Typically you'll ramp up your debt and do it in tranches because you wouldn't need the full funding upfront. You do it as the course of the construction happens. But the annual debt service on a $63 million borrowing at a 4% interest rate is about $3.67 million per year. And so if we were to add this debt of 4.3 million into our portfolio in a couple of years with our existing exempt debt profile, that would trigger us to be in excess of that 12% framework recommendation.
And we're only talking about the debt for our school and the debt for the cap, right?
Cool.
So that doesn't include any other consideration or any other large capital.
This
is all exempt debt.
This is strictly looking at exempt
Exempt
debt. This is not within the levy at all.
Okay, so it would be,
And I've got listed here, there are some other things that are also in our capital program. As I said, there are things that are programmed out for several years. And some of those include, and whether they come to fruition or not, remains to be seen, right? So there is a project at Snug Harbor that right now is being programmed in at $3.5 million. There are a couple of requests for turf fields. We will eventually need to refresh the existing one, but there's also been requests for additional turf fields. There's no end of roof projects in this community. Multi-million dollars worth of roofs for the PAC is on schedule in a couple of years out. The schools for sure. There's plenty of roof projects to go around. There's also a lot of HVAC and technology investments that are in our capital plan. In a couple of years, I think it's FY29, there's a request for several $100,000 to rebuild the retorts. We want to make sure that we stay on target with that because obviously that is a key service that the town provides. So there's never an end to the list of capital requests for these departments to have the proper resources to do their job. So, yes, sir.
I'm assuming that this already includes the seawall and the DPW facility already baked in.
It does.
And as Betsy pointed out, in 2014, I think we knew we were violating that 12% policy when the town decided to build the new middle school, high school. So it's not a legal limit, it's a self-imposed
Right.
12%.
It's a guideline.
It's, you know, it's fiscally responsible.
Mhm.
It's what we should be doing.
Mhm.
But we have to manage ourselves and do what we have to do. We need to fix things. What is do you know, have any sense for the relative size of Alden compared to the DBMS high school project, so the physical plant, the square footage?
I do not, and now we're getting into uncharted territory where I've got the school
Yeah,
department with me
you
too.
can easily sit here and say, well, it's half as big, okay, easily to say, so it should be half as costly. But the truth is, the feasibility study back then was 200,000, and now it's 1,700,000. So even though the building's smaller, it'll probably cost more than that.
Of course it
Oh,
will.
yeah.
Of course it will.
Yeah.
But I mean, I challenged Mary to do this and I am so appreciative of it. I think that equally important to this piece of it, exempt debt, is the guideline that we have in our financial guidelines that we should, within the levy, have 2% of the levy that is earmarked for just straight debt. Everything shouldn't be exempt debt. Households have mortgages, households buy cars, households get different projects and different things that if they have a significant buy, it shouldn't have to go to exempt debt every time. And we have not held to that guideline as well. So it's
Prop 2.5 is forced our hand.
exactly right. But if indeed we are discussing an override and we are looking at the override, it is time to at least consider increasing the amount of the levy that is dedicated to debt so that it isn't this much of a shock for a truck. Or, I mean, 5 trucks, $1 million. Who would have thought that, right? And so it's kind of a partner. It's a partner on exempt debt, the impact of these things we have. And we don't even know what we don't know as far as other huge capital projects that could come up, right? So,
Also, I gotta bring up stabilization fund is underfunded, isn't it?
The
I think
plan
we're in
is,
policy.
sorry,
It's in policy, isn't it?
yes, it is. It is. We looked at that last year when, at the time of the citizens petition. And the plan is to replenish that funding as we promised. Yeah. So what I'm looking at up here, to sort of, if I may.
Sure,
expand
please do.
upon What you were saying.
I've talked enough.
No. This is, I just want to illustrate what we mean by this conversation, debt within the levy. So when we put together, what I'm showing you here is the worksheet we handed out way back when we first started this whole process, where it has 5A and 5B side by side. And with respect to the debt service in the 5A budget, those amounts represent actual debt service that's on the books that we have approved, we have either issued or going to be issuing by 2027. So this is exact dollars for the annual debt service that we expect. What we're talking about is on the 5B side, there is no additional funding right now allocated to debt. The 5A side, this total debt budget of 8.4 million, that is inclusive of both exempt debt and debt within the levy. So the exempt debt is about 7-point-something million. The remainder is the debt within the levy. We don't have any additional funding programmed in right now to the 5B budget to increase the capacity for taking on more debt to address these capital program requirements. And so what I was talking about with Betsy and with the town manager is that the recommendation is that we should be adding additional capacity here in the override budget in order for us to be able to approve and move forward with a number of these projects that have been languishing on the capital request
Both
list.
under the levy and the exempt debt?
No, so exempt debt wouldn't go here,
okay.
no, just within the levy.
Just within the levy.
Yeah.
Couldn't that increase be,
Bless you.
God bless.
bless you, hand in hand with the approval of the project?
So if I'm,
We go to
if
town
I'm,
meeting and they say no, and we've increased it, what's the point?
so are you talking about an excluded project or a project within the levy?
Well, either.
So if it's a project within the levy, then what happens, if you think logistically about what happens at town meeting, the budget gets voted in Article 5, capital gets voted in Article 6. So you won't know whether those projects are approved or not until after you've taken the vote on the budget. So we need to make a decision on whether the budget should have the capacity to handle.
And I think that it's just being mindful when you're looking at what the potential revenue, your levy will be. This took me years to kind of get through my head, is that you've got debt, the debt falls off. And unless you earmark that amount of your budget to hold for debt, when it's gone, it's gone. And people don't understand that.
Well, they do, and that's why we sold. Say sold has a negative connotation to it. We convinced ourselves that that was the prudent thing to do. Because that way we weren't permanently raising our levy limit. And it wasn't like we were
Well, I'm
not
talking about,
cognizant of it.
Yeah.
We were, because we wanted to try to hold the line on that commitment to 2.5.
and I'm not saying that we give up on exempt debt. I mean, and because I think that it gives the community a chance to vote on it, think about it, and then vote at the ballot. And if there's bigger projects like schools or, you know, something over, I don't know, 5 million, 10 million, I don't know what the number is. But I'm talking about the day-to-day business of being able to carry debt that within the levy for trucks, for, you know, smaller items that make more sense to bond as opposed to wiping out the capital. But it's just being mindful of it. And I think that we haven't been as mindful of what these percentages are and holding on to what we should be carrying under the levy, which is just cost of doing business, and then extraordinary services that we're providing, building buildings and so on and so forth. I think they should be exempt debt. I think that the town deserves that level of conversation for
But
them.
we haven't had the funding.
Yes.
To do that.
Because we haven't had overrides, or we haven't called exempt debt what it is, which is an override. But it's a temporary override, it's not a permanent.
But if you put it in 5B, that's all gets voted, 5B gets voted as one thing, it's not. So if the 5B is voting, if you're voting on that for this one particular item, it's actually, it's.
I'm sorry,
I'm not
I've
sure,
got them confused.
obviously not explaining this very well. If
But
you
we're-
have,
we're
if you have, you know,
voting on it. for
40
this.
items on the B. That's usually is voted in one vote.
We go down the list,
Go through it.
just like we do A, and you can hold each line and discuss each line. And you can not vote for one and then vote for what's left of the bottom. We do have that capacity, we do it that way.
Okay. Right.
So, for example, if we were to modify the 5B budget to include something like $200,000 or $250,000 in our debt service budget to give us the capacity to borrow, then that would give us the ability to approve some of those capital projects that right now we're unable to approve. And it depends on what it is that we are needing to borrow for to determine how far that $250,000 would go. You know, depending on the item, if the
There's
item
a
is
lot of question marks.
well, it is, because so if it's a, you know, if it's a construction project, then it can go over 20 to 30 years. If it's equipment, then it's a shorter lifespan, so it gets paid off faster. So it depends on what the capital item is that debt capacity would be used for. But we'd be able to take advantage of more flexibility in addressing HVAC needs or roof needs or other needs.
I think
in the levy.
it is a step in the direction of maintaining the buildings and that we currently have that are not going to be fixed or restored, or I don't know, I'm not using the right word probably, but that
Maintain.
maintained,
Would be the right word.
that, well, they need to have some work done on them before they can be maintained. They should be maintained within the budget, but right now there's
Bringing them up, bringing them up to
projects in
standard.
these buildings that we can't cover.
But if it's in 5B, this is where I'm getting
Okay,
confused here. If it's in 5B, okay, then you still have to have a balanced budget, right?
yes,
Okay, so you have to take something else out of that. Okay, because 5B is not gonna be additional to the balanced budget, or is it?
It is.
well, found,
So
5B
so
includes
5B
the
So
override.
everything in 5B is an override.
Right.
Okay,
Well,
okay, so that's my question. Should it be a 5?
Well, it's the balanced budget plus whatever additions that we choose to have it, and I'm just trying to.
That's an override.
Yeah, yes, exactly
Right,
right.
yeah.
But I'm just trying to refocus some of our thought process on being able to maintain all the things that we've got
Mhm.
in a reasonable fashion by giving us some room to incur some debt. So if you've got an HVA, a system that's gonna cost $500,000, you might not want to carry it as a $500,000 expense in capital. You might want to bring it out over a few years, but at least you'll be able to have the choice.
Hmm.
That, we're kind of going down a rabbit hole on that. What I was looking at this is I wanted to just get a sense of what we were discussing as far as building a new school.
Right.
Because anybody that's been in Alden, I haven't heard anybody say that it's a restoration project. I've only really heard there's no decision that's been made, but anecdotally, it
Yeah.
seems as though it would be a new building. And, I wanted,
What does that mean?
yeah, I want to know what that means. I want people to understand what that means
On
at
your
this
tax
point in
bill.
time on your tax bill. And I also think that, because of the way that the application was made to the state, it somewhat limited other options that the schools might have explored. You don't look happy.
Oh, this whole conversation has made me joyous.
Yeah.
We're running out of money, we can't afford what we've got.
Yeah, we
But
don't.
back to increasing the capacity to borrow within the levy limit
Mhm.
requires an override.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Part of
Sorry.
it's override.
Override 2.5 in order to create that capacity.
Get the other side
And
of the.
can we in fact guarantee to the voters that it's for capital only? It will not be used for anything else.
So if it's put into the debt service budget, then it can only be used for debt. And we cannot use debt to pay
Because
operating.
we got hurt last time with that $1 million cushion we wanted. We were accused, I think wrongfully, that we could use it, we'll use it next year immediately, and it wouldn't be used for reserve, and it wouldn't get us for 7 years, and it was just money we didn't need when we were trying to solve a multi-year problem with it. And I didn't want the same thing to be the reaction to this capacity increase. That, oh, you're gonna get it for capital, yeah, but you'll be spending it on people,
Yeah, no, if it's allocated in the debt service budget, debt can only be used for items that you can borrow. And you cannot borrow for labor.
Right.
There are strict guidelines on municipal finance.
Gotta be
Thank you.
a thing.
It's gotta be a
Good.
tangible, it's gotta be an asset.
Yeah, it's gotta be something you can touch.
And a
So
big sum.
the reason that I asked Betsy to put it on the agenda tonight was to have this conversation, but when we had distributed 5A and 5B to you folks, that was not included, but the next version of the 5A, 5B worksheet that we will distribute to you will have a placeholder in there. And you guys can decide whether you support the ability, support keeping that in the 5B or not.
Right,
Does that
and
make
then at
sense?
that point, we already have some capacity within the budget, I mean, of
Within 5A.
obligations that have already in place.
Correct.
A
We have
certain-
existing debt service for existing projects that have been.
Right,
completed.
and I don't know the percentage of the levy that entails, and I don't expect you to know it off the top of your head, but that would be, where are we now? would be a good starting point for that conversation.
The feasibility study will be another, a warrant item, correct?
I don't have the answer to that, Chuck.
Okay.
So it'll be presented to town meeting in some fashion, right?
Right.
It may be presented as part of Article 6.
Mhm.
And in which, or it may be a separate article. I have no idea, how the town manager and the select board are gonna compile that information. And, within, let's just assume if it's included in Article 6, the funding source, could either be free cash or it could be a borrowing.
And I mean, we can obviously have further discussions when we get to voting it. I'd like to hear what,
Fiscal's gonna,
fiscal has to say. But, I think that certainly the feasibility study, which is the bridge to a new building, is something that the community and the taxpayers should have every opportunity to weigh in on.
Sure.
And not be just included in the normal day-to-day capital budget, but that's my opinion only. And we can talk about that more when it comes up.
Did you say that there is a number that's going to be in the B budget regarding raising the debt capacity? Or is it being contemplated?
I am going to put a number in there.
Do you know what that number is yet?
The number is probably I don't, because
Fine.
let
If
me
you don't know, if you
respond by
haven't
saying,
finished-
I wanna, you have another policy in your framework, which is the amount of debt within the levy. So much like we just looked at testing the policy for exempt debt, we want to test the policy for within the levy debt. And if we're below the framework, we'd like to get to be within that framework, and it depends on where we fall. So let me take a look at that.
Right. And I just was, 3 a.m. shift, I'm thinking about this stuff and this is an opportunity that if we need to be able to maintain these buildings, we need to be able, and sometimes they need work and the work costs money, but I don't think it should be used that we are financing everything. Hopefully, we can pay for under a certain amount and we out of our capital and out of our free cash, but if it becomes a
project basis.
in a project by project basis, so it's not a wholesale, let's just charge it. It's just a ability to look at things on an individual basis that makes sense.
When does the warrant close?
So the warrant has technically closed. It was yesterday. But it won't be officially finalized until January. So if there's a need to
It reopens all the
reopen
time.
the request would need to go to the town manager. So if anybody has any additional warrant articles they would like to see on the warrants, those need to be submitted to the town manager.
Is that the first step? Town manager?
Yes. For a warrant article, yes.
But the select board has to,
So let me just bounce this publicly so we can get the ball rolling. I mentioned it last year. But CPA,
mhm,
beach lease,
mhm.
I see it, the beach is recreation, it's historic. And whether it qualifies or not, but I'd like to see a portion of the beach lease paid out of CPA. And that will free up more money in for operating budget.
So that's an interesting proposal. However, so when we talk about deadlines, the Community Preservation Committee has already started, and I believe they're well underway of reviewing applications. And the application deadline for this coming town meeting, that application deadline was, I believe, in October. So if you want to move forward with that kind of a proposal of any use of CPC funding requires an application be submitted to the Community Preservation Committee for them to take action on. So if that's what you're looking to do, I'd suggest you reach out to them and
Okay.
see if they are willing to accept a late application. Otherwise, this may be an issue for a subsequent year, but that would be the process.
Yeah, I will. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, and in light of what Mary had just said about the warrant closing and A and B, I wanted to just briefly go through, we had made some suggestions of things that were in B that we thought should be in A. There really weren't that many of them. So,
But I did not capture a list, so I'd like to get that list, so we
Right.
can contemplate those.
right, so I'm going down here.
So I think the question is, if we focus on the 5B, the question is what it was proposed in 5B that you guys feel strongly should be moved to 5A. So I think we can focus on just those items. Does that make sense? Is that the problem we're trying to solve here?
Well, one of them was in the accounting office. I have notes here that we were gonna do the RIF, and I had a question that how much that you are going to be adding into the assistant town accountant. What? But you may not have the answer to this, that I think that the assistant town accountant shouldn't be an B, I think it should be an A.
Okay.
I just think it's based on the conversations that we had with the town accountant and the fact that she is making sure that we are collecting, paying, monitoring, auditing $100 million corporation. The fact that that's being done understaffed makes me very nervous. And I don't know if anybody else, nope,
No, I think.
you don't feel that way, or you?
I do feel that way. I think that was a, for the portfolio, the size of the portfolio. It is more than one person to do that job. Likewise with, I think it was DPW, the engineer, the town engineer went to the B.
I'm sorry, this was not.
So
let me get
let's,
down
so
to-
It was civil engineering.
accounting, does everybody, am I alone in feeling that that should be A?
No, it's hard without sitting with where does A sit right now?
So A is a balanced budget, so what that means is
You
anything
take
that's
something out of
moved into A, something has to come out.
I just don't want to
We
surprise
have a budget
Rainey
here that
when,
was dated October 27, 2025. Is that number still the number we're working with?
I don't have that sheet in
That's
front
the
of
one.
me.
no, it's this one.
Yeah, I know, I'm working with my current version, I apologize, I don't have that.
Just go to the bottom line, let's see what it looks like.
I wasn't trying to do a math problem tonight. I was just trying to come up with areas of concern that we thought should be moved to A so that Rainey has a fighting chance of
Yeah, but I think
looking
we
at it.
have to look, if A is already balanced,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
and
We're
that
gonna
person
take
isn't in there,
Well,
then what are we gonna do? What
Yeah.
are you gonna take
Yeah.
out?
So is that the number that you're
I
looking
think your
at?
recommendation has to
What
be
do you have?
Yep.
decided.
but at least it gives them an idea of areas of concern. And I think that it's.
We went here to balance the A to the B, JR, right? Because when we talked to Sheila in her department heads about the DPW needs, right?
It's 98 million. That's B, but A.
That- I'm sorry, so
Oh,
I was looking at
that's the
the
B budget, 1082, yep. That's
Yeah.
right.
last
this
page,
is the
lower
current-
right-hand corner.
That's the current sheet.
Oh, way over there.
That's,
Way up.
that's the same one. we have.
98091,
No, I have 98912691.
That's,
That's lower right-hand.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah, this is the correct, it's the same.
so A plus B. Is that, am I reading that down correctly?
Correct.
The one we have here matches that.
my number doesn't. What's the date of yours? What's the down the bottom?
December,
No, it's scribbled.
October 27,
Yeah, so
2025.
So I think that since October 27th, when this balanced budget was brought, numbers have changed somewhat on the plus and the minus, or is revenue locked?
This is what we got before.
You know what
Yeah.
changed as,
Something.
the health insurance, so the items we talked about tonight?
No, that number's the same over there.
Okay.
Do you have the same number, Chuck?
Yeah, what he's looking at the final column, Article 5A and 5B.
Yep.
Which is 99,000.
And I'm not saying that this
Yeah.
is something that you should or should not do. I'm just
Yeah, which is
saying
what they have.
that this is areas areas that we've thought about, right? And then I don't want to surprise you or Ray. That is never my intent.
So again, we're happy to
9 to
take
1.
your
It's slightly
ideas and thoughts, but anything
That's
that
what
moves from
last year.
five A,
Yeah.
from five B to five A.
And take something out of 5A.
Correct.
Yes.
Right.
In
So,
order
Not
to
the B, it
balance
has to
the
be an
budget.
A.
so
Right.
friend, I'll look at your sheet, in a moment and make sure you have the correct one.
But Mary, that's not a.
That's, I think that's a great idea.
If we make a recommendation, we think
I wasn't
the
prepared.
town engineer should move
Yeah.
into the 5A.
Well, I'm
I
just
think you
based,
guys-
I'm just
but
doing
you
it
know
based
that
on
it's
the
a balanced
conversations
budget,
that we have
right?
when we had those
So,
departments.
If
And
that's important
wanna
to you,
see
what's
what,
less important?
Rainey's gonna come in and he's going to be expecting us to go through these departments and vote these budgets, vote the budget, right?
Well,
And,
So if you
and I
can
want
we
to
might not be ready.
then maybe at the
Right,
next meeting.
right, so,
So what do
Maybe
we,
have some suggestions.
Thursday night, I can't be here and.
Neither can I.
So it's not a great night for deep discussion.
right,
I don't know what's in them.
there, yeah, and I don't think there's that many of them, actually.
But
It's just voting the budget.
what's Tuesday? Can we go, put that back in a week from today and is that still timely? So,
Rainey, this one's gonna be impacting you and Mary.
I will not be here on Tuesday. I have to be at fiscal advisory.
all right,
Rainey,
You're on mute, Randy, if you're still there.
you might have just stepped away
Stepped
for a
out.
second.
Yeah.
All right, so let's just think about it.
What's he scheduled? When's he scheduled to come in?
Well, he has to present to the select board when?
December 15th.
I'm looking at this chart here. And I don't think his presentation is.
And the
So the
schools,
school is next Wednesday, right?
schools is next
Next
Wednesday.
Wednesday, and we thought we would be talking about that next Thursday. A week from Thursday.
Right,
That's just good.
right. But they're the only ones that we have locked down because they had 3% in the balanced budget.
Well, it says here he's gonna deliver,
Hard stop.
town manager delivers budget to select board on December 12th,
And 15th. Two nights.
which is,
Not very far
No,
away.
no.
which is a
I'm
week
sorry,
from Friday.
if I may, please.
Oh.
It's gonna be, the documentation will be transmitted to the select board on the 12th, and it will be presented at the select board meeting on
Well,
the 15th.
I think it's a good idea.
If folks want to kind of take a look at this and, you know, and I know I had a couple of them, and that was basically just note from my notes as we listened to these departments, there were a couple of things that I thought, this is crazy, it can't be in B, it's gotta be in A.
So I know HR was one of them. What did we decide to do? She cutting staff? Oh,
It's in the B budget.
okay.
Oh, that one, and that's one of the recommendations that I made, that should not be in the B budget, it should be brought into the A budget.
Because I know I wanted to move hers into A budget, but I don't know what to cut. I don't know what else to.
But to Mary's point, if we make a recommendation that says, take it from B and move it to A, what is the less of a priority? And that gets into a question of, are we colliding with the town manager's priorities and the select board priorities?
And I'm not saying that these are recommendations that I even expect will be acted on, but I think it's worth a somewhat of a conversation. I don't want to surprise Rainey when we're now presented with the balanced budget. And then I say, well, you know what, I really don't think the accountant should, I think that you have to put that in A and tell him that night. That'd be,
He will be on in just a moment. Oh, he's
So-
here. Sorry.
So,
Rainey,
Rainey, if you wouldn't mind joining us.
so at the town
Al's
meeting,
got a
oh, okay.
Hi, sorry. I was at a copier. I apologize.
No,
Yes, sir.
Al, is that mitten that from something you wanted to say, or was it the
Yeah,
mitten from?
Yeah, no, that's not an accident. I'm putting this up because I'm hearing this discussion going back and forth. Are we moving 5A to 5B and so on and so forth? Here's my issue. My issue is Yeah, I think that's a great discussion. But what pops into my head is when you do that and you say one should shift to the other, you're really invoking a phrase, which is more important? Is this more worthy than the other? So it creates all kinds of issues that I think need to be really carefully reflected on because, with a few exceptions, I haven't heard many through our meetings starting in September that would encourage me to make those shifts. I would be very hesitant to do that unless there was a real compelling reason, like when Rainey put it together, he got it wrong, or maybe he didn't think it through. Now, I haven't seen that. I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just trying to be open about thinking about this because my
Right.
concern is making these kinds of shifts at the last minute or towards the end is something that we should reflect on before we act. That's my comment. Thanks.
I agree with you, Al.
I don't disagree. That's what I'm trying to get us to do is to reflect on it and with no expectation that Rainey's gonna blow his budget apart, but just to foster the conversation.
But if
I
all
think
of,
I think Rainey is nailed down to a balanced budget. I mean, that's his job. He can't do anything else. The same
Yeah.
with Mary. That's their job. They're not going to depart from that. So the question that is left in our lap and left in the select board's lap is, okay, this is the tight shoes that we're living in. What do we
Mhm.
do? And where do we feel like, oh, this is without a doubt something that should be shifted? I'm just trying to just present that and not be argumentative, et cetera, or confront anybody, but just let's think about this before we do anything too quickly.
Well, I don't think we're gonna do anything. I think we're just kind of,
Did you have a question?
Not anymore.
I'm sorry, go ahead, friend. I'm,
No, it's perfect. No, but the reason we were asking you to come in, Rainey, is the debate has been about whether during our proceedings over the last 3 months, whether there's some items that you put in B that we think it's very, very important to move into A. But obviously, any dime we move out of B to put into A throws your budget off, and you have to come up with the money to pay for it. And Al's position are with comments where I think reflect mine as well. You put a lot of thought into the budget. I think we learned our lesson that B has to be where we put things that we can't afford in A, whether we like it or not. And I think we have to bring forward a minimalist, what we need, not what we want, kind of a budget. And I think that's what you've done for the most part. And I think we should go along with that. There wasn't a lot of, people can say, well, you guys didn't change any of his budgets. Well, what's to change other than to tell them to fire the rest of the town? I mean, come on, really, we took a pretty good chunk out of our population of employees last year, whether you believe it or not, and whether open recs count. I don't care how people want to calculate it, but that is a lost position that could be filled overnight if someone was willing to take it. So we are thin right now, and we need to correct some things. We overreacted in the wrong direction, I think. And whatever we can do to restore balance to the town and the schools, we should do. And I think rightfully it's in B, because the citizens of you have to do a balanced budget within our resources. That's it. So anything beyond that, we got to go ask for help.
I'd just like to, I just like to add on to that, friend, when we talk about just strictly by the numbers, right, that's true. However, when we were visiting with our departments, we heard a lot of conversations about, I'm working every weekend. I'm not able to have a work-life balance. I am overstretched. I am stressed out. The morale has plummeted in many of the departments. And it's in direct correlation to taking the reduction in force that we took in order to maintain the balanced budget from last year. So it's more than just the numbers, and Rainey, you're well aware of this as well. but it becomes a balancing act, which it's Brady's budget. Brady gets to do that juggling act, right, along with Mary and the other department heads. But there is a component in this development of the budget and what's in B and what's in A that has a people component associated with that needs to be brought under consideration.
The other question, Rainey, was, your expectations for this coming Thursday, whether you anticipate or need us to vote all the budgets on Thursday. Because some of us are not gonna be here, but
This coming
this
Thursday?
coming Thursday. And, I know I'm not gonna be able to make it, JR can't make it, can
And I know,
Ashley, Mark?
Mark can't make it. He's already,
He's out of town.
Huh?
I think he's out on traveling, isn't he?
Is
Oh,
it,
no,
what does Tuesday look
he's
like?
got a concert.
What about next Tuesday?
Yes, I'll be here Tuesday,
I can be here.
And that'll.
but we don't know whether delaying you till next week is a problem for you or not.
No,
Well,
it's not.
Presenting on the 12th to the board, right? The select board, Randy?
15th, the 15th.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Mary, you just said that. So the numbers, the actual budget, the town manager budget goes out, transmitted on Friday, the 12th. Presentation by the town manager is the 15th of December.
But before you present, we have to vote the budget before you present, because they're looking for our recommendations to go along with yours prior to their deliberations, correct?
Well, that is not a requirement of the bylaw. That's just something we've done ever since I've been here. In fact, the first year or two, this was a while ago. We weren't in 100% agreement, but we were shortly thereafter. So the objective for me is to present a balanced budget. I love to have us always in agreement going into the meeting. And that's happened for the last 10 or 11 years. If we've got it all done, fine. If we don't, it's not the end of the world. The finance committee will get there, or we'll figure it out. If we have to make further movement down the road, we will.
And when will the school committee be presenting their budget to the select board?
They submitted, excuse me, the school committee votes theirs. Is it the 10th, Mary?
Yes,
Yes.
next Wednesday.
Yep.
Yeah, so they'll vote theirs a week from a week from tomorrow. Hard to believe.
Right, it's moving fast.
It
Yeah.
is, and be clear, when I was talking about some of these things, I'm kind of raising it to the level of catastrophic. I'm
What?
not talking about it would be, great or whatever. I mean, that was kind of where my head was at, where after talking to the department heads, the way we all have, and working back and forth, where was it go beyond a pain point and come to something that could be a detriment to the town? I stand by the accounting office needs another person, because I think that eventually we're not going to be filing on time.
I agree.
I know you
think- I know that position needs to be restored, but I think it has to be in place.
Well, and then that's fine. I mean, but I
I think what I'd like to bring up is that you're saying, well, if we can't put it in A because we've got to balance the budget, it's got to be in B, right? Even though we know it is a need that should come under the 5A budget, but we're constrained because of the revenue, right? So that doesn't take away from the fact that I think that our employees are working overtime and not great, for many of them, great experiences, right, from a work perspective that is presenting the need for either restoration. I guess what I'm trying to say, folks, is that the town, I think the town employees have a level of commitment to the point that they will do whatever they have to do in order to make this town run to the expectations of the community. And that is not always a fair, right, position to put our town employees in. And it may result in some negative repercussions in the way of continued plummeting morale, not being able to attract new talent, not being able to keep the talent that we have. Right? And those become dollars and cents issues that are perhaps not solvable in the financial spot that we find ourselves in, that is the reality. And I think what Betsy is speaking to, and what we're getting from our department heads and what's actually going on. So it's not just about the numbers. It is about the numbers, but it's also about the human impact of not having the revenue. As Mark was saying, we don't have a cost problem, we have a revenue problem, right?
And also the impact to how we function. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's a matter of people waiting an extra hour for the roads to get plowed, you know,
Yeah.
we've done that to ourselves. If we've chosen not to provide the resources to do that, that's great. I think, but some of the issues that I've looked at, I'm concerned that it could damage how, and you know, you and I, we know what old bankers die hard here. I mean, we know.
Please, I hope so.
Yeah, no. But especially in that accounting department, that is
We're engineering.
yeah, engineering.
I heard the
Yeah.
exact same things
I
from the
know.
department heads that I. spoke.
Everybody did, everybody did. Yeah.
There are serious morale issues and people don't feel appreciated, and I understand that, and I believe it's true. And I think we did cut too far,
But it was,
but we got there because of our own
Last year, when we were,
hubris that we thought we could cure all our problems in one swoop, which we couldn't do. So we're gonna take it piecemeal, and I think we'll get the town support.
right.
I do believe it's there for a reasonable request.
It's gonna have to be reasonable.
Yeah.
Exactly, I think it is.
so last year, we went with this $4 million override, whatever, I forget what the number was now, but did we go through the 5B at the town meeting and vote each one individually?
Yes, we did.
Okay,
Yep.
but it changed.
What,
Correct?
I'm sorry, Randy,
No,
go ahead.
no changes were made at town.
No changes were made at town meeting.
That's correct.
There were
And-
some
and so-
proposed, but
Nothing
nothing.
passed.
Okay, so nothing bad. So we're gonna do the same thing this time.
Yep.
So that if there's anything that's on that budget that the town people do not want, hopefully it'll be brought up at that point.
No, the ballot box is where it shows up.
Well, they have a
Well,
chance.
no, what you're referring to is the line by line. What we do is the same thing we've done every year. Is we go through each budget.
I-
5A will be
you know,
first,
That's chance
line
for
by
us.
line, and then we'll do the same with 5B.
Oh, to address the B
It was
today.
approved at town meeting, but it was closer than I thought it was going to be.
Mhm.
And it was probably an indicator of what was coming at the polls.
Right.
I think
No. Go ahead, Mary.
one of the harder parts of an override to understand by some folks is that not all of that funding will be utilized in the first year. And that the idea is that it's a multi-year strategy in order to continue to have uninterrupted operations, right? So the previous override amount was $5.8 million in total.
Right.
But in year one, not all of that 5.8
Yeah.
was being proposed in the budget.
Mhm.
So I think some folks assumed that all 5.8 was going to be used immediately, and that's
Yeah,
not the case
majority
at all.
assume
We
that.
didn't
Well, that's what
communicate.
the position you
Communicate that.
beat us over the head.
Right, and so that's why I'm raising it now, so
Doesn't matter.
the
We didn't.
Yeah, the override-
Effectively.
amount has not been finalized
Right.
yet, but folks need to understand that once that amount
Yes, I understand.
does get finalized and put forward before the community, the intent is that there is capacity to have a couple of years worth of uninterrupted operations, and so not all of it goes onto the levy in year one. Does that make sense?
That's the story that didn't get, that was not understood by the citizens of town. And
But it's a requirement of the process. So the process is laid out by the Department of Revenue. And there are stringent requirements about the language that has to be included on the ballot question. And that language has to include the upper limit of that amount.
and that's
And there's
what
no
people
getting
saw.
around that.
And that people set a 5.8 million and they did not see how it was going to be spent out.
And that amount is set by the selectmen, correct, Rainey?
What amount? I'm sorry.
Set by the selectmen. After we've discussed A and B, they then circle to a number, correct?
Yes.
But that has to be supported and communicated. You have, right, we're always talking about, we have to meet people where they're at, right? And we didn't, not in, we, I mean, you know,
It didn't happen.
it didn't happen.
Can I flip the conversation for a moment, and it may not go anywhere?
Sure.
But, so I think we started this conversation by some folks wanting to convey that they'd rather see some things moved from B to A. But can we talk maybe a little bit about B? Are there things in B that this committee generally does not support? Is there anything in B
That's a good question.
that really jumps out at you as something that is not a priority for this board?
I think 90% of B was restoring those positions that got eliminated, which have created problems in those departments.
You're correct, but there are also some, there's some new positions and there's some new expenses as well.
I think there's some,
There were some that I noticed that weren't in the town manager's recommendation, which I agree.
Okay, yes, from the department request to the town manager.
That's right.
Okay, yes, yeah.
So I agree that, you know, where the town manager stands on some of those,
Mhm.
but so based on what I've seen so far, I think the town manager's thing for B is pretty close, 99% where we're gonna be, where I think we'll end up being.
Right.
Okay.
But that's different than what the departments asked for.
I think the only non-restorative positions are public safety, where they're looking to continue that program of adding the people that they wanted. I think both police and fire were looking for 2.
Right.
And I think those are adds, not.
Yes, they are.
Yep, so I'm
Replace it.
focusing on, I'm sorry, oh, I don't have it up there. The column that's called cost of new positions, and you're right, there is two
In the fire,
new
the two.
additional positions in the police department being proposed. And 2 new additional positions in the fire department being proposed. And each with a slight reduction in overtime. You know, that conversation about, so, but there are some others, and would it be helpful if I popped it up here real quick? Okay.
But those, for the public safety, that is in 5A, correct?
No,
Or it is in B?
No, it's in B. And I'm just trying to,
so I'm just,
when we go to voting this thing, I want Rainey not to be surprised that, where did that come from? Where, from left field, and where did that show up?
so this side here is B.
Right.
And this column here is the proposal of new positions. Do you see that, Fred? On your, okay, so if I scroll down. The first one we encounter is planning board. So this is an assistant planning director / environmental planner being proposed.
This is not a restore, this is a new,
This is a new,
okay.
And that was the department asking for it.
That is the
and
planning
town
board?
manager not recommending.
correct.
Right, and I
agree
think
And I agree with that.
that I absolutely can't support that. but-
And then under facilities, there were 2 positions requested and the town manager is recommending one of the 2
Yeah.
in this year.
Right.
Okay,
As long as the admin gets in there, it's ridiculous to pay her to be a facilities head and have her doing clerical work. That's,
Yeah, I
that's penny wise,
totally agree.
pound foolish.
okay. So then here is the 2 new positions.
That's my opinion. Everybody just jump in, please.
Are you,
This is the 2 new positions in the police department?
I'm sorry, Mary, are you on the blue side, in the blue column?
Yep, I'm on the right-hand side of that worksheet. Okay, that's you guys. Yeah, I'm doing
Okay.
it. So
Oh,
that-
yeah.
When that figure of $157,000 is there, is that included as health insurance and all that stuff?
No,
So what is the cost per body of benefit? That's not.
So
That's the main third.
average cost, because we don't know what they're gonna do.
They may not take the benefits.
Because I mean, I think that's an important figure,
Right.
and it's a big change.
it doesn't include computers,
Other shared cost.
expenses.
Shared cost would what, be an average of 30?
Shared cost totally is 20%, but for the benefit.
Right? Is that fair? So 30 would be a fair average cost of benefits.
If that,
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that that's what
So that's-
these new hires would entail, but that's,
30% of
no,
that $157,000 we have to add to it. for the
Right.
benefits.
And I think that is, what JR just said is just as a rule of thumb between 30 to 35%. So let's assume $100,000 salary, which is obviously just a number I'm picking out of the air. Add $35,000, which is going to show up in other departments' budgets. I mean, that's how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd like to make one additional point with respect to some of these departments that have come in. One of the most glaring things that struck me is that as we listen to problems with our physical assets, it struck me that the facilities manager, who's manager, is quite capable, but is bound to her desk. And it seemed to me like we are defeating ourselves by not having somebody that's able to go out and deal with the maintenance problems, work with the schools, custodial staff, and issues with work assignments, et cetera, which are complicated. But those are the kinds of things that will save us money in the long run. And I think we
Yes.
need to really focus on that, because while we go through this annual process, we vote a budget and here's the budget, et cetera, but we really don't think about the incremental leap of additional costs that get added up because we don't do something and we don't explain it that way. And I think we need to start explaining, like, if you have a facilities manager that's talented and capable, and she's answering phone calls and looking at work orders, in the meantime, there's nobody out there checking on the toilets or the HVA systems in our buildings. And that's leading to us hiring a contractor outside that's, charging reasonable rates, but still we're not able to get to it. Does that make sense? Those are the kinds of hidden things that are not easily discussed in a budget proceeding like this. But to me, as I listen to this, it's kind of glaring in my head. It just says, wait a second. What are we doing if we're not providing the right people in the right places so that we, and this is a word of choice, we avoid these additional costs in the next budget cycle?
So this is saying, for instance, in the salaries fire, that the town manager is recommending allowing the additional person.
Yes, for both police and fire. And then,
Gee, I hate to say it because I've always supported police and fire, but I certainly put that money someplace else. I put it in facilities before I put it in extra person.
you're talking in the 5A, not.
no,
I'm talking.
I don't want to bring up anything negative, but we've been spending a lot of time with the schools and they're very reasonable at looking at Alden and the school building study. But my rhetorical question, which I can't do a damn thing about, or nobody in this committee can do about, what if we had addressed this on a facilities basis 10 years ago? Would we have this issue in front of us where we're looking at a very passionate, committed school committee looking for the town to commit $1.75 million to Mass School Building Authority study? Would we be doing that now if 10 years ago we had reflected on that? Those are the kinds of things that, they're not part of an annual budget cycle, but I think they're part of forward strategic thinking. And that's the part that's been kind of grabbing my attention.
Okay.
I'd like to do this next
Yep.
Tuesday.
But I think that this conversation was
Well,
good
it's a
because
good
it's going,
start, though.
it's gonna make us go back and really solidify
Right
where
now
we
and
really
then,
are.
so it's a good exercise, I think.
Well,
I'm not gonna vote anything.
because I mean, if we just go to facilities on the budget. And look, we're not fattening them up even in B.
And again, and I. feel the
Okay,
same
so
way
in-
about
Hang on
DPW.
one second, I
It's
apologize.
57,000.
I just want to get to where JR was talking about, I apologize. Didn't want him to read off. This information. So what we are talking about, all right, so for facilities, in 5A. The expense line items have been increased by $100,000 to give me the additional
I thought it was
capacity.
more than that, yeah.
600.
I'm sorry, it's up now to 600, right? So that includes some of her fixed costs, which are maintenance contracts, where we are required to bring in a vendor to do the elevator inspections and stuff. But then there's also some funding for her to be able to do projects.
Used to.
Yeah, you do repairs and maintenance, correct?
So that's in A. And then B,
The admin assistant.
Is the admin.
She asked for admin
just,
and
just,
another worker.
just
And the town
salaries,
manager recommended
Just
just the admin.
just salaries and no extra money to do anything
No,
in B.
Well, she did.
Exactly, but
Yeah.
one of the things that she talked about is that she's capable of doing some of these repairs and maintenance projects. She just, right now,
Can't
is
get out of her office.
exactly performing administrative functions. So if she had administrative support, that would get her in the field and that would help to address some of these issues.
I'm.
And it's what she.
And I, yeah,
confused. I know.
and I would vote for that.
It's going to still not following.
You know,
Okay,
I'm not following through one to the other. So and maybe this is a conversation that to be continued, that we go away, have an opportunity, because I don't have my.
Right. And
Yeah.
I was just introducing this as an idea tonight. I didn't expect this to be any decision making other than
So.
are we open to looking at this and just with the lens
It's not gonna be.
that we want to give Rainey feedback before he locks this down. That's all.
I think you've got it locked down, but okay. I mean, I agree with the lockdown, but I also, I want to understand. And only Rainey can really address this, right? If we say, we think that the town engineer just should be prioritized over the, adding somebody to the accounting department. Right? Or, because we're really talking about people here in the 5B, we're not talking about really assets, right? In the sense of stuff, right? The expense lines really don't increase that much. Our expense, our large expenses in the people, right? So to, Chuck's point, well, if you take it from B and you move it into A, then something from A's got to drop off.
Yeah.
Right, so what, and I
think Mary hit the nail on the head. It's not whether we want to take stuff from B and put it into A. It's more of a conversation about, are we satisfied that all the B recommendations are valid?
The department people put the Bs in there themselves.
upon the recommendation of Rainey and Mary.
No, that's, the.
But Randy and Mary, their first pass at it, you can see some that were supported somewhere.
There was an ask, but when they met with Mary and Rainey, you guys talk together and you say, this is what's possible. You have a negotiation essentially, right? And when I say, well, why, when I asked Sheila, why is this in B as opposed to A? The response was that was the recommendation that Mary and Rainey gave to us, right? So everybody's got a boss, right? So that was the discussion of it and the final decision that went into town manager's budget.
Correct.
Get it?
Yeah.
But I think that Betsy, I totally get where you're coming from. And I can see both sides of the issue. But again, I feel, I think we should have, the opportunity to give Rainey our recommendations of where we think there's some priorities that we
Sure.
should be, reconsidering, maybe something that's going into 5A, but I also, we know Rainey really well, and he
thinks about this
he
stuff.
dreams of this stuff at night, right? And how do you balance it so it's as equitable as possible?
I wasn't trying to
I know,
second guess
I
it,
know.
absolutely not. I think Mary hit the nail on the head. I think maybe it's a matter of our priorities or our thoughts on B as opposed to A.
I think
There was just a
A-
couple of them that jumped out at me so much.
A will be ready to stand to, we'll
The
vote
night-
A,
It's a nightmare
And
that's
then
gonna
we'll-
continue.
discuss B.
So then for Thursday,
No.
what is the plan of attack?
Well, it doesn't
So-
sound
so-
as though I have enough people for Thursday. Because if
Okay.
you're not coming, you're not
I'm
coming,
coming.
you're not coming.
I'm
Oh, no,
coming.
you're coming?
Yeah.
Mark is.
Three of us that I-
And Mark isn't coming.
Is Ashley gonna be able to join?
I don't know.
Well,
No, she had a conflict tonight, but I think she was gonna be here. Thursday.
But if these guys want to vote on these things, they
Yeah,
will be here for the vote.
I'd rather have
I
as
would
many
rather
people as
wait till
possible, sure.
next Tuesday and Thursday. to-
Okay, so you have 3 meetings remaining that are on the books for right now. And again, as Rainey said, that the hope is that we'd love to get your recommendation before this goes to the select board, but if that doesn't happen, or maybe you're able to do the recommendation on A and B is still a work in progress, then,
Well,
that's okay. But
Yeah, that's fair.
next Tuesday, we'll have everything we need with the exception of the schools, right?
but that's good, that's a big part of the.
Yeah, but that should be Thursday.
So right now, the agenda for your remaining 3 meetings is to vote recommendations. There's not any other departments scheduled to come in.
Good.
So my question for you guys is, are you able to have those conversations without having access to some of the department heads? Or do you have questions where we need to bring some of the department heads
No.
into your meetings?
No.
Oh, no, okay, so then you guys have 3 meetings to do with as you please. And
Thanks, Mom.
I'm
Well,
just trying
I
to
think-
see what, I'm trying to, friend, my ulterior motive is, what deliverables do you need from me?
Right, and I think that where I hear the crowd coming out is A is pretty much locked down.
Yes.
We
Right.
certainly trust that Rainey did the best he could with what he had. If there's any change to the amount of money that he's got to work with, then hopefully we'll have that, but I don't think there is. And we'll save our conversations for B, on what we feel, because we overshot last time, and I'm just trying to be mindful that we cannot do that again, and we need to be.
Clearly, we're not.
No, not on A certainly, and I don't think on B either, but let's,
So are you keeping the meeting on Thursday, or are you proposing to cancel Thursday's meeting due to quorum?
I'd rather have JR and Brendan and Mark, on
Yeah.
Thursday, so,
Okay, so you're gonna keep the meeting with her, okay?
no, they're not gonna be
He's not
here
gonna
on
be here.
Thursday. They're gonna be here on
I
Tuesday,
would propose we cancel Thursday and.
come back on
You-
Tuesday.
you Tuesday- you Tuesday,
There it is.
Thursday.
One more time.
I'm trying to knock out my week.
Yep, I get it.
Okay, so Linda, you've got us, great.
All right, beautiful.
I think
I'm
you
sorry if I got everybody all worked up here.
No, no,
It's just-
that's good.
This is what.
It's good to get everybody worked up.
Yeah,
I
this is
think it's
proposed.
good to at least start the conversation to see sort of
Basically.
Where everybody's,
where you're at and what homework folks need to do.
Yeah,
I mean, if
Yeah, take a look at what you've got and,
So
kind
let's
of
cancel
revisit some of it and so that when we come in and we
Cancel
start
Thursday and come in strong on
Tuesday.
do you and I need to meet JR before we talk about this? Are you-
Look at it first and see.
All right.
Entertain a motion
Thank
to
you.
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second.
All those in favor, Al? Chuck,
Aye.
JR,
Yeah, all right.
Brenda.
Betsy, I.
Kathleen, I.
Thank you.
Mary,